Thunder students, Mr. Williams here, taking you through the next subsection of notes here for Section 12, the Stagnant 70s. We're talking about the economic spiral that has experienced the downturn in our United States economy experienced by the nation through the rest of the 1970s. Now, reviewing, what we had covered so far over the last few sections of study regarding our United States economy, our industrial complex. We had that successful transition from a wartime to peacetime economy following WW2. A lot of anxiety about slip-sliding back into a depressive economy is eradicated as we do successfully open ourselves up to domestic and international business in regards to producing goods and services to get the world up and running again. Because of the enormous amount of work that was made available, the record levels of production that were hit through the 1950s and 1960s, the vast majority of our nation gets to experience economic prosperity that was never before forecasted or expected, okay? With those years of economic growth and overall prosperity, many Americans have a couple of basic assumptions that our United States economy and industrial complex is always going to be number one in the world. And number two, the profit margin. The profit margin that was building this level of true economic prosperity for our nation, it was always going to be big because fuel was going to be cheap. It was readily available and cheap. Those assumptions, though, vanish early on in the decade, and there are some catalytic events, all right? Remember, what we're going to cover here in the next couple of slides didn't cause the economic turmoil, all right? They got it started. There are a few other things that were building behind the scenes, some other procedural items, if you will, years in the making that are ultimately going to be uncovered by some of these events that get our economic downturn started. So the Arab Oil Embargo of 1973 is the first event that effectively starts the downward spiral of our United States economy. Energy, readily available and super affordable fuel is no more, okay? We had gotten to the point where we were starting to import a lot of crude oil from Middle Eastern oil-producing nations. So we had a unique relationship with many of the monarchies that existed over in the Middle East in the 1950s, 1960s, and early 1970s. We also had a really unique relationship with the nation of Israel. It was a nation that was constituted after World War II, a place for Jews who were persecuted because of the Holocaust, i.e. Hitler, the Nazis, and WW2, a place for the Jews to finally call home on the international stage. So, many of those Arab Muslim nations not fond of a new Jewish state right there in their backyard, located in and around some of the holy cities for both religions. Not a good mix, okay? So through the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and into the early 70s, some of these Arab nations are going to conspire and launch war against the Israelites, or Israelis, or against the nation of Israel. There we go, finally. All right. The United States of America, man, tough position. We've got these Arab nations that we're trying to do business with, but we've got this nation that we have to support and back because we pushed for its constitution. All right. The United States of America and other free nations, all right, Western nations, routinely supported Israel financially and with military aid. Time and time again, these Arab nations would attack Israel, and Israel would defeat them. The Arab nations, by 1973, they've had enough. And they've also got the United States of America bent over a barrel to an extent because they're starting to have more and more involvement with us in regards to the crude oil trade. So, as the Arab-Israeli War of 1973 takes place, the Arab nations finally go, hey, Western allied nations, the US of A, okay, we're tired of you defending the Israelis. So, you know what? We're not going to do business with you anymore, okay? We're not going to do business with you anymore. And that sends the American fuel economy into an absolute frenzy, okay? The next slide here is the actual news footage. All right, I believe CBS News footage kind of documenting for you the Arab-Israeli War of 1973 and the ensuing Arab Oil Embargo, okay, the OPEC crisis that sends our market skyrocketing in terms of fuel prices. This is in the Google Slides. I'll let you watch it there. The fallout from the Arab oil embargo is a skyrocketing in fuel prices. And we're not just talking about putting stuff in your car. We're talking about all the other products and fuel sources that come from one barrel of crude oil, okay? We're talking about items that are made out of plastic, that could be involved in the consumer and sector of our economy. That's also in the medical sector of our economy. So many areas of the United States economy industrial complex affected by this skyrocketing in oil costs, okay? Now, again, I stated that the event was going to kind of uncover some of America's bad decision-making or phenomena that were years in the making that would cause this economic downturn, okay? What is exactly that? Well, it's the fact that America, over the last 2 decades, leading up until the early 70s, hadn't adjusted its economy to support itself in terms of employment, all right, jobs going forward. We had effectively assisted in the rebuild of Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, West Germany. We had effectively supported in their rebuild so well that those are now free market economies that can challenge us on the international stage. And they are working super efficiently. And there are also areas where you could get your work done at a much affordable rate. So we started to see already, okay, some American jobs, all right, areas of production move out of the States and into some of these other locations, or individuals shut down some of their supply chains per se and production methods and just import those goods from those other nations, okay? So what we've got, all right, effectively is an old school manufacturing-based economy. 38% of the jobs in the United States of America in 1960, manufacturing jobs, okay? By the end of the 1970s, that drops by 10%, all right? So we are effectively in the middle of a crisis where we've got jobs that are built off the premise of how our economy was successful 2 decades ago, okay? That can no longer compete with, all right, no longer compete with some of the other free market economies, the cost and the bottom line that they can provide large corporations, businessmen, investors in the States. So effectively, we've got a lot of cheaper products, efficiently and quality made products showing up from some of these other countries in the United States of America, and they start to cut into the marketplace and effectively cause sales for traditional American manufacturing companies to decline. As sales decline, we start to see unemployment rise. As unemployment rises, we start to see individuals not being able to spend as much money. So we get into a recession. We get into that depression cycle that we covered back in Section 2 and Section 3. However, a new interesting phenomenon takes place, and that is actually inflation. So typically what we see is a decrease in prices so people can sell things when the economy takes a downturn so they continue to, somewhat fund their operation. No, on the contrary, we start to see an increase in prices in the 1970s, and it's something referred to as stagflation, where the economy becomes stagnant because there's less consumer spending, less production, and there is greater unemployment, but prices also rise, okay? So it's a new phenomenon, and it's absolutely damning to the American economy, something that had been so vibrant and so successful for the previous 2.5 decades, right? That does it for the economic spiral. Make sure you're checking out the textbook sections that coincide with this reading, give you greater depth and understanding. I will touch on more of this again as we get into our next subsection, which is the American response to this economic downturn.